Hello and welcome to this week's podcast where we are talking all things breathwork and how you can seamlessly fit breathwork into your real everyday life, because I know that you are so busy, you feel like you can't fit one more thing into your day, and it just becomes another thing on your to-do list that falls off the bottom and you feel guilty for not doing. So today we're going to talk about how we can fit breathwork seamlessly into your life to increase your focus, your ability to be present in the moment, reduce your stress levels, help you to feel less anxious, less stressed, less overwhelmed. So let's get to it and dive in. So the problem that I think we're experiencing in our life at the moment is that we as a culture, as a society, as a group of human beings on this planet are feeling really overwhelmed. We're feeling really stressed. And, I read recently that around 42% of millennials would actually categorize themselves as being burnt out. And, 42%, letting that statistic kind of sink in for a moment. So burnout being kind of down the more extreme end of the spectrum, but there are so many of us who are potentially somewhere in the middle. We're not chronically categorizing ourselves as burnt out, but we are stressed, we are overwhelmed, and when we feel that way, we're not getting the most out of our life. And I think, that comes from the culture that we exist in. We have lost our sense of community. We're no longer supported in the way that we were before. We have this kind of nuclear family arrangement where we are responsible for our children. We don't have that network to care for us and support us as parents as well. And also, we are more and more disconnected from our sense of purpose and meaning and alignment with our authentic self. So there's all these kind of external things going on, and there's so much pressure. There's so much pressure that it leads us down this path towards stress and overwhelm. So what can we do? So breathwork is an incredible solution, and I think because we do exist in this culture where we're kind of pushed towards more is better, it's kind of an all or nothing scenario, isn't it? We have to do more, we have to be more in order to be happier, in order to be successful, in order to achieve what we want to achieve. But is that actually the truth? And in fact, is less really more? So with breathwork, it's an incredibly powerful tool. And before we get into exactly what to do and how to do it, I think it's really important to take a step back and to understand how breathwork impacts your life, how it can really help you, and what's going on sort of physiologically in your body when you are breathing differently. So if we take a look at the body, we take a look at the nervous system, we know that we've got two sides to our nervous system. Very crudely, very basically, we've got rest and digest on one side, and then we have our fight and flight on the other side. And we tend to sort of think of these again as kind of black and white. You're either in one or the other, and that isn't the case. When it is a spectrum. And the reality is that a lot of us are hanging out. So if you say, 10 out of 10 is maximum stress, that kind of classic scenario of being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, then most of us are or a lot of us are hanging out around that kind of 2-3 mark on the spectrum. And we're kind of in this low level chronic stress. And when we are in that state, our body isn't functioning optimally. We are, feeling these sensations in the body of stress, of overwhelm, and of course that's impacting our happiness and our enjoyment of our day-to-day lives. So how do we get out and away from that 2-3 stress level, maybe even higher for you, and bring ourselves back to balance? Well, there's a saying in life that there's, you can't control, there's pretty much nothing in life that you can control. The only thing that you can control is your breath. And just take a moment, take a breath, and just let that sink in. All you can control in your life is your breath. And when you change the way that you breathe, you have a direct link to your autonomic nervous system, and you are able to soothe your body, to make your body feel safe. And that helps your nervous system to come from that state of 2-3 on that stress end of the spectrum back down into the rest and digest, and everything beginning to function more optimally you're able to think more positively, you're able to focus better, to be more present, to be more joyful, and get more out of your life. So that is kind of, where breathwork is this link between the autonomic nervous system, what's going on outside in the world that's making us feel stressed, or maybe it's internal, maybe it's thoughts, whatever it might be. And then that link to the nervous system, to our stress response or our relaxation response. Breathwork is the key that unlocks that for us. So there's different kind of levels of breathwork really, and how we can seamlessly fit it into our daily life. So the first thing I think is really important to think about is how we are breathing day to day. Are we breathing in a way that's soothing our nervous system and making us feel calm, making us feel relaxed? Or are we in our day-to-day life, as we're breathing, as we're functioning, going about things, breathing in a way that is making us feel stressed? Subconsciously, of course, and these patterns that we get stuck in. So let's look at the two different ends of that spectrum. If we're breathing in a way that is making us feel stressed, then typically the breath is high up in the body, the shoulders are hunched, we're breathing short, shallow breaths into the chest, and the nervous system is receiving this message that there's a threat. And that it creates a negative spiral. So the nervous system is receiving this message that there is a stress, we begin to breathe even worse, and we keep going around in this negative spiral of this stress response. And then we take the opposite end of the spectrum, and we can do this together right now. We soften the shoulders, we soften the chest, relax the belly, breathing through the nose with the lips softly closed, drawing the breath down low into the body. Feel the ribs expand as you breathe in. Relax as you breathe out. And the volume of air is small and subtle. So there's four aspects really to what we would call optimal functional breathing, is through the nose, and then an easy way to remember, LSD. So we're in and out through the nose, is light breath, so the breath is subtle and quiet, flows softly and easily. It's slow, ideally breathing one breath taking around 10 seconds, so breathing in for 4 and out for 6. And it's also deep in the body, so it's down into those lower ribs. And we need to retrain. If we are in this tense breathing pattern where it's high up in the chest, we need to retrain the body to breathe that way. And that's where we have to commit to self-awareness. So, that might mean setting an alarm on your phone for regular intervals during the day and just checking in. How are you breathing in that moment when those alarms go off? It doesn't have to take any time out of your day. It's just fostering and creating that awareness of how you are breathing day to day. So that would be kind of the first aspect, is to get that kind of functional breath into your mind, to understand the difference between those two sides of the spectrum of breathing. And one of them is going to soothe and calm your nervous system, make your body feel safe. It's going to make you feel more resilient to stress. It's going to improve the oxygen flow to your brain, improve your concentration. And, when you improve that concentration, that focus, it means you're able to be a little bit more objective about your thoughts. So there's a lot less catastrophizing going on. There's a lot less of that racing mind. There's a lot more productivity happening because you're able to concentrate more. So these are all really positive things. And, just understanding how to breathe functionally and beginning to make sure that's happening on a day-to-day basis without needing to do anything else, just checking in through the day, that's going to begin to change things for you. And then, looking at I like to think of breathwork as like a multivitamin that we take to make us more resilient to stress. So breathing functionally is one aspect, that's part of that multivitamin. But another aspect is these longer practices. And yes, I know we're talking about fitting it seamlessly into your day, but please bear with me. Bear with me here. We do need to do a little bit of work, and I'm sorry to say that. But what I would love to say is if we could incorporate breathwork in a way that is, 10 minutes in the morning and doing a little bit of breathwork before we go to bed, or it doesn't have to be in the morning, it could be any time during your day that you have that, then that is going to begin to create huge shifts in how you feel and how you experience your life. So I know that some days you won't have 10 minutes. You're busy, and I get that. So let's first talk about how you can create a habit that is so small that you can commit to it every day without fail. And the reality is that that will set you up for success with fitting breathwork seamlessly into your life. You make that habit so tiny, so small, that you can commit to it 100% of the time. So for me, I call it the kettle commitment. Every morning before the kids get up, I have a cup of tea on my own. And that's when I do my kind of breath work or meditation. And it kind of varies, and I sort of listen to my intuition of what I feel I need that particular day. But my commitment to myself is that I put that kettle on, and in that moment, I take one of those beautiful breaths through the nose. It's light, it's slow, and it's deep. One breath. So just that's all I'm asking you to do, is to commit to one breath every day. And the reality is there are some days where the kids wake up before me and I don't get that time. And I do miss it, and I find it frustrating when that happens. But I still commit to taking that breath when I put that kettle on, because I know I'm going to do it every day. I'm going to have a cup of tea every morning without fail. And when I put that kettle down, I'm going to take that breath. But then there are most days, and I would say, I'm literally cuffing this percentage, but I reckon around 95% of the time, I actually do have 10 minutes before everybody else in the house gets up. And so on those days when I do get that opportunity, I have taken that breath, but then I take my cup of tea and I have that intention to do my 10 minutes of breath work. But the point here is I've made that commitment so easy that it fits into my life every single day. And there are days when I just do that one breath. And that's okay, because I've still achieved what I set out to do. But more often than not, I do get to do that 10 minutes. Sometimes I will do it, I set off a little bit early for the school run, and I'll sit in the car and I'll do it for 10 minutes before I go and pick up the kids. So it's finding what works for you, what works within your routine. But the key here is to make that habit so small and easy that you can make it a commitment that you stick to. And then on the days when you have more time, great, you can expand and do more. So what should you do in the days when you do have those 10 minutes? So we've talked about functional breathing, about setting those alarms through the day to make sure that you are breathing in a nice functional way. So when you actually sit down to do some more kind of focused breath work, what should you be doing? So this is where I love to use a technique called Breathe Light. And this is kind of, again, this other aspect of the multivitamin that we were talking about. So we've got this functional breath during the day, and then we've got this technique which is really going to bring ourselves back into state of coherence of the nervous system. It's going to soothe the soul, soothe the nervous system. So we want to be breathing in that functional way through the nose, light, slow breaths, ideally breathing in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 6, and then deep and low in the body. And we would start that by taking those conscious breaths, feeling the ribcage expanding on the breath in, softening on the breath out, allowing the whole body to relax as we're consciously breathing. And by the way, your mind will 100% wander here, and that is okay. When it wanders off, you just guide it back. And feel sort of encouraged that whenever the mind does wander off, that when you do that process of guiding it back, you are creating this neural pathway in the brain, which is creating a more awareness, self-awareness. And that self-awareness is key to absolutely everything. It's going to give you the ability to be more observant of your thoughts and your actions, of how you're showing up in your life, and give you conscious choice on what you want to do with that information, to change the way that you behave, to change the way that you think, which ultimately creates more happiness and fulfillment. Anyway, I digress. But we're taking those lovely, beautiful breaths through the nose, light breaths, slow breaths, deep into the body. And then we just begin to soften and lighten the breath. So we just reduce the amount of air that we're beginning to take in. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can become aware of the kind of volume of breath that's traveling in and out through the nose, the sensations that are coming through the nose, and just begin to feel less air coming in and out through the nose. You can think of making the breath quieter so that it gets so quiet that you can pretty much hardly hear it. And then eventually your breath will become so light that it almost feels as if your ribs aren't moving at all. It becomes so subtle and quiet. And that's what we're aiming for here. And this is going to change your physiology. So essentially what that's doing is it's allowing the blood vessels to begin to open up wider as the carbon dioxide levels rise, which is actually a good thing. So the carbon dioxide levels rise and the blood vessels open wider, so more blood's allowed to travel around the body to the brain. And then and the rest of the body, of course, all the organs, which is really important for the function of all the different organs and systems. And then carbon dioxide is actually a really important molecule. So when the oxygen gets to where it needs to go, the oxygen actually needs carbon dioxide to unlock it from the hemoglobin. And if carbon dioxide isn't present, or there isn't enough present, then the oxygen won't be unlocked. It won't be released. It'll just carry on back around. So carbon dioxide is a really good thing. It creates this space, opens the blood vessels, and it allows the oxygen to be released to go where it needs to go. So you are beginning to change your physiology. And this breathwork technique is really soothing and really calming for the nervous system in the moment, but it's also going to, in the long term, make you more resilient to stress. It's going to lower the amount that you need to breathe, which will give the body the message that you are safe. So I hope that makes sense. It's some quite kind of complicated science to just take on board in this quick podcast. But essentially the Breathe Light is really going to make you more resilient to stress. It's going to soothe you and calm you in the moment, and it's going to make this huge difference. It's your multivitamin of kind of reducing your overwhelm, reducing your risk of burnout, making you less anxious, less worried, less catastrophizing, which is not a word, but I just totally made that up and slipped it in there. So that would be my kind of like, I would love to practice Breathe Light every day for 10 minutes. But you know what? I have that intention, but just make that commitment to something super small. And on the days when you do get the time, then do it. The days where you don't worry. It's okay. But it's about that consistency and keep going with it. Make it a part of your life that is it's a non-negotiable part of your life, and that you will absolutely reap the rewards in how you feel. So I guess that's kind of like our multivitamins. It's like there's one more actually, that's a pretty big one. How are we breathing kind of day to day, and how can we change our physiology, what's going on inside our body to make us more resilient to stress with our breath? And those are the two sort of things that I would be really aware of. And then the third one, which is super important, and I can't believe I forgot, is sleep. So, excuse me, I've got a cold right now. But if we are kind of breathing, we've started to be really conscious of how we're breathing day to day, and we're breathing beautifully. You know, we're breathing in a way that's calming our body. And we're doing these practices most days where we are making ourselves more resilient to stress. Then what about the kind of 8 hours, hopefully, where we're sleeping? And, you know, those 8 hours have the capacity to make a really big difference to our breath during the day. So what my recommendation, and this is the weirdest thing that I promise that I'm going to say, is to get used to breathing through your nose when you're asleep. And if you don't breathe through your nose when you're asleep, then you'll know, because you'll wake up with a dry throat in the morning. You know, you'll need to neck some water when you wake up, or your partner might complain that you snore. It's really difficult to snore through your nose. I mean, you can do it, but it's a lot quieter. So if you're snoring, it's really likely that you're a mouth breather during the night. And it's not a good thing for your nervous system. It's not a good thing for all those things that we're hoping for, to be more resilient to stress, to be calmer. So I would really recommend using a little bit of micropore and just popping a little bit of micropore over the mouth to just softly close the lips together. And you can just use a little square. And if it feels like when you go to bed, you're like, oh my God, you know, this feels just too much and it makes me feel panicky, then the best thing to do is to just start doing it during the day. Just pop a little, when you're just going around the house doing some housework or whatever, pop a little square on and just kind of get used to that feeling of the lips being softly closed. There are other options as well. They do the Oxygen Advantage. They do mouth tape, which goes, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I'll put a link into the notes. That goes, it's like a rectangle that goes around the outside of the lips, so it doesn't actually block the mouth, but it just encourages the lips to close. So some people feel a bit more comfortable with that. But Micropore is cheaper and easier, to be honest, and that's what I use. I've used it every night for probably the last 3 years now, and my husband does as well. So people probably think we're really weird, but the kids are totally used to it now. The kids come in the middle of the night. Sometimes I have to just lift my Micropore up to speak to them and then grab a new bit. But yeah, that is those 8 hours when you're asleep. If you are breathing through your mouth, it's really not ideal for your nervous system and for your stress levels. So I encourage you to consider that. And I promise that is the weirdest thing that I'm going to ask you to do. So yeah, that is, I guess, how I would look at kind of creating this kind of multivitamin of like, ideally we're practicing breathe light. Again, if I always find in my personal life, my husband always comes to bed a bit later than me, and it used to infuriate me. But what I tend to do now is I'm like, okay, well, this is actually my opportunity to do breathe light again. So I will do that breathe light exercise again before I go to sleep. And it will make you have the best, the most restful, the most relaxing transition into sleep that you can imagine. It is like just a magical exercise to totally relax your body, and it will just get you into a really nice deep sleep. So again, it's about kind of finding a way to incorporate these exercises into your life that's not going to take up like huge amounts of your day, but is going to have a transformational response to your body. And not just your body, but then your experience of your life. Yeah. And then I think what is really special about breathwork, and perhaps has made the biggest difference for me, is it's given me a tool to manage stress in the moment. And, I think that is it's a hugely powerful thing that I just cannot explain what a difference it's made to me. Before I started my journey of yoga and breathwork and all this other stuff, I was quite a kind of, I guess what you might say, like the Americans might say, like a hothead. So I definitely have like a fiery, determined kind of personality, which is a really great thing. But I have a temper. And particularly when I then went on to have children, that came out. When your child is having an enormous tantrum and you almost want to have a tantrum back. That's the reality here. You forget that they are the child and you are the adult. And before I had an awareness of my body and an awareness of my breath and how I could use my breath as a tool, I was much more prone to shouting and losing my temper. And I'm not going to say that I never do that now. I would love to say that, but I'm 100% not the finished article, but I am so much better than I was. And, I had an example of this just the other day. My daughter was having a tantrum, just sat here behind me, and she was really angry, and she grabbed the meatball that I've made meatballs for tea, and she just threw it across the room, which clearly is infuriating when you've spent, X amount of time creating a meal. And in fairness to her, she'd had a huge amount going on, has got a lot going on in her life. But previously, I would 100% have just shouted at her, and the whole situation would have escalated and got far worse. But because I've got this awareness of my body now and I can use my breath as a tool, I was able to notice that my shoulders were tense, my chest was tight, my fists had come into balls. I could almost feel my shoulders closing in and rounding, and that is a natural stress response to want to protect your vital organs, and because I know how to soothe myself, I was able to take the opposite response. So I was able to go, okay, just relax your face, lips closed softly, space between the jaw, shoulders relaxed, chest relaxed, belly relaxed. Breathe slowly through the nose and take even a sigh. So you can take a physiological sigh in these moments, let it go, and you feel as you exhale, that softness. But what I tend to do is to take these kind of what we call many small breath holds. And this is all based on the Oxygen Advantage work with Patrick McKeown which I really encourage you to look into if you haven't already. But all of the things that I'm talking about here are based on that. And it's very much based in science, it's based in research. It's evidence-based, which I think, breathwork has this tendency to be kind of seen as quite woo-woo, but actually there is so much research behind it now. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing off the point here, but in that moment, I was able to breathe slowly through my nose, to consciously soften my body. And we use this technique called many small breath holds. And you breathe in for 4, out for 6 if you can. And then you would just hold the breath for a couple of seconds, building up to around 5 seconds. Take a couple of breaths, normal breaths in between. And you always hold the breath after the exhale. So just to recap that, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 6, and then just hold the breath for a couple of seconds. You don't need to pinch your nose or anything like that. Just soften the body as you hold the breath. Take a couple more of those nice slow breaths, in for 4, out for 6, and then again hold the breath. And just keep repeating that until you feel calmer. And this does take practice, because I've been doing this for quite a long time now, and it's almost become, it has become an ingrained response. So I sort of tend to subconsciously, my body tenses, I get stressed, and my body immediately makes me do that exercise without me even having to really consciously think about it, which I think that's the biggest shift, is that when you really begin to incorporate this into how you're managing your stress response, it becomes automatic. And then you find yourself much less reactive to these situations. You're able almost to be more objective, to be sort of outside of the situation, to be like, I'm the adult here. I can be calm. I can manage my own stress response through my breath. And so that's called kind of many small breath holds. And it's something that I teach inside my yoga studio. It's something I teach in one-to-ones. And I have got a practice recorded for you. So I'm going to give you a link to all of these practices that I've talked about in the end of the podcast, that's completely free for you. So do please hang on to listen to me waffling so that you can get your pause on that, because it's really great. And then, yeah, I think to just bring it back to summarize, I'm aware that I've been talking for almost half an hour now, but I think we live in this world where we're constantly fed this information that more is better. And we might think, well, breathwork sounds great, but I have not got an hour to sit in a lotus position and, zen out and do breath work. And so therefore it's not going to work for me. But actually, what we've discussed here is really that breath work can be fit seamlessly into your life. You can become more aware of how you're breathing functionally day to day. And even if that's all you do, that will make a really big difference to your life. You can set this commitment of taking 1 breath a day and link it to something that you do without fail every day, so that you are always having this awareness of your breath. And then trying to extend that commitment, so that's the kettle commitment that I call it for me, to find a 10-minute slot. Ideally, like in the morning is great, or if it's in your lunch hour, whatever it might be. But you can also do this when you're walking as well, I often do it when I'm walking the kids to school. So as I'm walking the kids to school, again, I will be, or even driving the car to school, I will be thinking about breathing slowly, breathing through the nose, those light, slow, deep breaths. So if that's how you remember it, it's through the nose, it's LSD, light, slow, and deep. And that is how we begin to build this habit of incorporating breathwork into our day. And then looking at what's happening when you're asleep. Are you mouth breathing when you're asleep? Are you snoring? Are you thirsty? Is your throat dry? And considering being open to using mouth tape. And yes, I know it's weird, but who cares? So be open to trying something different, and you might just find that when you tape your mouth shut, you have the best night's sleep of your life, and that you never look back, which is what happened for my husband, it's what happened for me, and what happens for the people generally that I work with. And if you get an opportunity to do a little bit of that breathe light exercise before bed, then even better, because that's going to help you drift off into a really incredible sleep. And then learning some tools to cope in the moment. So, the beauty of doing breath work, of doing breathe light, is, as I said earlier, we create this conscious awareness. So you are not only doing breath work, but you're effectively doing a meditation as well, because all that meditation is focusing on one thing and noticing when your mind wanders and bringing your mind back. So breathwork is a meditation too. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. And when you create that self-awareness, you begin to notice when your breath changes, you notice how your body is feeling, you notice your thoughts, your behaviors that aren't aligned with what you want to be, who you want to be, what you want to experience. And you can make more conscious choices about how you then, what you do with that thought, just questioning it. Like, is this true? Is this what I want to be thinking right now? Is this helpful? And being able to question that and make a more conscious response. So I hope that sums up how I practice breath work and how I fit it into my daily life. And I hope it's really helpful for you. And what I've done is I've collated some of these practices that I use all the time into a free resource for you so you can get started. So if you go to my website, you will find that if you go to www.cyclicalsoul.com/breathwork, there's a page there where you can sign up for this freebie, and inside you'll get a breathwork practice that's going to teach you how to breathe functionally day to day. You'll get a breathwork practice that's going to be a beautiful breathe light practice that you can use in the morning or before bed. They're short, they're sweet, they're easy to fit into your life. And then what else do you get? You get a breathe, many small breath holds practice. So this is the tool to use when you're stressed and in those moments as well. So it's going to set you up. It's going to set you up to incorporate breath work seamlessly into your life. It's going to make you more resilient to stress, more relaxed, much calmer, much able to calm your racing mind and stop catastrophizing, able to concentrate and able to be present and enjoy your life. So I really hope that sounds good to you. And if it's something that you'd like to explore further, it's www.cyclicalsoul.com/breathwork. And the link is also in the show notes, so you can just click on that one. And that's it from me today. I really hope that everything is good and wonderful in your world. And please reach out to me on Instagram or on my contact page on my website if you have any questions or you just want to start a conversation about how I can support you. Yeah, that's it from me. So much love and see you soon. Bye.